Hey, good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We're here today to share an update on highly pathogenic avian influenza here in Pennsylvania. On Saturday, April 16th, the Department of Agriculture confirmed the first positive case of high-path AI in a flock of commercial poultry in Pennsylvania in Lancaster County. This finding was also confirmed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Veterinary Services Laboratory in Ames, Iowa. With this detection, the department has activated our response plan and placed a quarantine on the farm and all commercial poultry facilities within a 10-kilometer radius of the infected flock in order to protect Pennsylvania's $7.1 billion poultry industry. There is no public health concern for Pennsylvanians, and we are prepared to respond to this agriculture issue. We have planned for this moment for years. We have watched the virus spread around us in recent months, with Pennsylvania now being the 28th infected state. We have our own hard lessons of 1983 and 84, and we have the lessons and experiences learned from others in 2015 and 16, and now in 2022. Each lesson has shaped and sharpened our focus, has refined our protocols, has strengthened our partnerships, and built a resolve and capacity to respond. Pennsylvania is an animal agriculture state. We have continuously invested in our animal health infrastructure, including an Animal Health and Diagnostic Commission. We have developed the Animal Health and Diagnostic Laboratory System, which links all three of our health and diagnostic labs real time. Our lab here in Harrisburg, the land-grant University of Penn State lab, as well as the University of Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical School lab with ours. So all three connected real time. The industry, the department's Bureau of Animal Health, Penn State, Penn Vet, the USDA, the General Assembly, and the governor were and are prepared to respond. We budgeted and set aside $2 million since 2016 during our last high-path AI threat to respond to avian influenza. In addition, we have equipment and supplies and laboratories and highly trained experts who have been on high alert and supporting our poultry producers. With this turn of events, we cannot let our guard down. It's even more critical that Pennsylvanians stay vigilant and maintain disciplined biosecurity planning. Wild birds, as they migrate north this spring, carry the virus and do not respect property or state boundaries. Biosecurity is most important for anyone who owns or works with poultry, whether on a commercial farm, in the wild, or a backyard flock. Anyone visiting a farm should be aware that your vehicles and shoes may carry the virus from other places you have traveled. Clean them thoroughly and stay away from the poultry barns unless you have to be there. Please be vigilant and do your part to protect our farms. And finally, we recognize that this is a critical issue, and it's critical to maintain continuity of business and access to interstate commerce. As such, the department will require strict adherence to testing and permitting. We have strict biosecurity protocols in place for Pennsylvania farms and for poultry products shipped in and out of the state. We understand the business we're in, the responsibility that we have, and the importance of the poultry industry. This will require all of us to work together to make sure that we are making the right decisions in these very difficult times, but we want to guide this industry through this challenging moment. I want to thank the PDA team, Dr. Brightbill and Dr. Hamburg, the Department of Veterinarians, our lab directors and partners in the industry, Executive Deputy Secretary Greg Hostetter and Deputy Secretary Jeff Warner, and all of our partners at the USDA for their hard work. Before I turn over to Dr. Alex Hamburg, I want to remind industry stakeholders and backyard flock owners that if you suspect your poultry is infected with avian influenza, Please report your concerns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to the Pennsylvania Bureau of Animal Health and Diagnostic Services, and that number is 717-772-2852, and select option 1. I'll now turn it over to our department's Assistant Director of the Bureau of Animal Health and Diagnostic Services, Dr. Alex Hamburg. Dr. Hamburg?
Thank you, Secretary Redding. It is a humbling moment for PA agriculture, but we are going to get through this. We are prepared to mitigate this threat. I want to acknowledge the PDA Incident Management Team and everyone out in the field, our partners in academia and industry partners, and who have been exercising for this day for many years. I would like to expand upon a few points that were mentioned by Secretary Redding. The positive samples of highly pathogenic avian influenza were taken from a flock in East Donegal Township, Lancaster County, and tested at the Pennsylvania Veterinary Laboratory. Since this detection, the Interagency Highly Pathogenic Avian Influenza Task Force has worked to address this disease threat to Pennsylvania's wild and domestic bird populations. The task force includes the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, the Departments of Agriculture, Health, General Services, Environmental Protection, the State Police, the Game Commission, the Air National Guard, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, Veterinary Services, and Wildlife Services. Thanks to this great partnership, the task force is carrying out the response plan, which includes education and public outreach and minimizing risk factors through strict biosecurity measures and continued surveillance, testing, and management. Like each farm's biosecurity plan, the response is tailored to each farm, operation, and incident. The number of poultry involved, how are they housed, the proximity to roads and other farms, as well as supplies, equipment, and personnel. For many years, and especially over the last several months, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, industry leaders, and poultry stakeholders have come together as a community to strengthen biosecurity plans, make emergency preparations, and educate and communicate with those raising poultry and pet birds. It is critical to remain on high alert and continue to practice elevated biosecurity. As of April 17th, 2022, infected birds in commercial and backyard poultry flocks have been confirmed in 29 states, including most states surrounding Pennsylvania. Genetic analysis of these samples taken in other U.S. states has shown that the virus is being spread by infected wild birds. Highly pathogenic avian influenza is mainly spread through direct contact between healthy birds and bodily wastes from infected birds. It is important to be aware of the signs and symptoms of highly pathogenic avian influenza in your flock, including sudden death, lack of appetite, decreased water intake, decreased egg production or soft-shelled or misshapen eggs, nasal discharge, coughing, sneezing, incoordination, or diarrhea. Wild birds in Pennsylvania were confirmed to be infected in March, including a bald eagle in Chester County and 4 ducks in Venango County. Pennsylvania's 3 animal health laboratories analyzed nearly 200,000 samples for avian influenza last year. The laboratories which make up Pennsylvania Animal Diagnostic Laboratory System have a capacity to test many more samples if necessary. Again, if you suspect your poultry is infected with avian influenza, please report your concerns to the Pennsylvania Bureau of Animal Health and Diagnostic Services at 717-772-2852 and press option 1 to speak to the veterinarian on call. Next, I would like to turn it over to Acting Deputy Secretary Jeff Warner.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburg. Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone here, to poultry industry partners, and to the team at PDA. As Secretary Redding mentioned, and according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, avian influenza detections do not present a public health concern. No human cases of avian influenza have been detected in the United States. We want to remind Pennsylvanians that there is no risk to the public, and poultry and eggs remain safe to eat if cooked properly. Highly pathogenic avian influenza is a highly infectious disease and can be fatal to domestic birds, including chickens, ducks, geese, quail, pheasants, guinea fowl, and turkeys. All poultry producers should always ensure biosecurity practices are part of their daily routine to continue to protect the poultry industry. 4 good practices include, first, having a premises ID. The ability to identify where poultry flocks are located in a disease outbreak is important to help animal health officials stop the spread of the disease quickly. Using premises as ID, state officials can quickly notify all flock owners of a dangerous disease in their area, provide recommendations for reducing the risk of flocks becoming infected, and recommend testing if needed to rule out the disease. Second, keep poultry away from areas frequented by waterfowl. Keep your birds indoors at high-risk times, including right now, as highly pathogenic avian influenza is circulating in the Atlantic flyway. If the birds cannot be housed indoors, make sure wild birds cannot access their feed and water sources. Third, keep control over the access of people and equipment to poultry houses. If infected wild birds are in the area, reduce the movement of people, vehicles, or equipment to and from areas where poultry are kept. Change your clothes before and after contact with your flock, and ensure visitors do the same. Finally, maintain sanitation of property, poultry houses, equipment, vehicles, and footwear. Disinfect regularly and maintain biosecurity restricted access to your facility. For commercial poultry owners, clean and disinfect housing at the end of a production schedule. We encourage everyone to visit the department's website for more information about high-path avian influenza and to visit the USDA's website for additional up-to-date information. I will now turn it back over to Secretary Redding for closing remarks. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you, and Dr. Hamburg, thank you as well. As we have laid out this afternoon, clearly, we are on high alert. This is a different day than it was a week ago. This is a different time than when Pennsylvania had high-path AI in the 1980s. We are prepared for this moment. No one wants to be in this moment, right? But important that we're prepared to respond, and we've laid out to you this afternoon our response plan, the team that's been developed over time, the investments that we've made with Penn State and the University of Pennsylvania Vet School. The industry has grown considerably, but also more sophisticated in terms of their management techniques, their systems that they have built. And we are in a moment today where we are trying to contain this virus so that it does not spread. And that means taking very strict and swift action to both address the movement of poultry, to make sure that we are dealing with all of the biosecure measures both on the farms and in the surrounding community, and that we as a state also are prepared to make the timely decisions to facilitate commerce, at the same time contain and eliminate this virus from Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania's poultry industry. There's too much at stake, and we want to make sure that we collectively, Pennsylvanians, are doing everything that we possibly can. At the same time, protecting both the industry and Pennsylvanians as well. So with that, we'll entertain questions for all of us. Thank you.
Can you share any details about the specific farm in question and how many birds were impacted and what happens on that facility as we move forward?
Yeah, so as we've noted, the farm is in East Donegal Township in Lancaster County. It is a complex of 1.4 million birds. And those facilities are, as we noted, our response plan and biosecurity plan require those birds to be euthanized, which is happening right now.
Where do you go from here? Would that farm have to sit empty for a while? Will they be able to? How does that work?
Yeah, so there will be, obviously a lot of this depends on whether there are further outbreaks. Right, so for this particular farm, there is a lot of work to do in terms of cleaning and disposing. They will have to test. There's an whole testing regiment that goes with, the protocol and our response plan. That'll be some time. This is not a weekend activity. It is not going to be just a couple of weeks that this business is out of business, right? Our goal is to get them back in, but we're going to have to test the community, the environment, the surrounding poultry operations to make sure that there's no further high-path AI in that environment, and then we begin talking about restocking this farm.
Can you help me better understand what happens to the surrounding farms that may also be involved with the poultry industry? Are they in a standstill? Are they able to sell, produce? How does that work?
Yeah, thank you. Right, so I noted trying to keep commerce moving, right? So the farm that I've just noted is the single farm at this moment that is positive, and we're working sort of with them to address the farm needs. In the surrounding area, we have within a 10-kilometer zone, there are 103 commercial farms and 162 total farms, poultry farms. Each one of them is in a strict testing protocol. And I'll ask Dr. Hamburg to expound upon this. But all of them are testing, so we're monitoring real time to make sure that it's not spreading. And of course, if it does, we'll have to take immediate action. But there's also a permitting process with it. When I mention feed flowing in and that activity occurring, this permitting process that we've established is for that exact purpose, right? At the same time, contain the virus, don't spread it anywhere, but let's make sure that we can at least move product in and move product out. That is an active permitting process for all of those farms now inside of that zone.
All those farms.
Yeah, Dr. Hamburg, you want to talk a little bit about the process, please? Thanks.
Absolutely. So for farms that are in the control area, that 10K zone that was mentioned, for them to move poultry or poultry products outside of that zone or any movement involving that 10K area requires that they test twice. So once at 48 hours before movement, then again at 24 hours before movement, and then that in combination with an approved biosecurity plan will make them eligible to get a permit. They can apply for a permit from our department, and once we verify that those items have been met, the permit will be issued for that movement.
If I could add to that, I mean, what part of this is to contain within Pennsylvania. It's also to send the right signals nationally and internationally, right? That this is a reportable disease around the world. So making sure that our trading partners have the reassurance that we've got full command of the response plan and containment, at the same time that we're taking every precaution possible to eliminate or at least minimize the movement of potential high-path AI into further commerce and outside of Pennsylvania, and to ensure that those products that are in motion, in commerce, can continue to flow, right? So if that's through the ports or into our marketplace or even out of state, all of that's done in a very controlled way. Thank you.
Optically, what can this do to the industry? I mean, with people looking from the outside in, what are the potentials that this could do, even if the end product is safe? Are you worried that there's some fear amongst people that could grow?
Well, I think there's always the concern, and I think in any sort of crisis you have a chance to teach, right? You can talk about the importance of agriculture and the importance of the industry that doesn't always afford you in normal times. But I think for us, knowing where we were at the last time we had high-path AI, we had no Animal Health and Diagnostic Commission, we had no laboratory infrastructure, we had no real-time linkage of the labs, we didn't have the testing protocols in place, we didn't have response plans or biosecurity plans. So I want them to appreciate that in contrast to where we were and where we are, it's a very different day. So they should have confidence in that. And it's also a reminder that this virus is not limited to commercial flocks. It happens to be in this case, but this is a species issue, not a flock size. So backyard birds, right? The commercial poultry, it's avian. So I want them to appreciate that this is not only about commercial poultry, but all poultry. So they should be cautious about that. And what I want them to do is to be, a partner here to limit its spread and exposure.
Does this have an impact on pricing? We're already seeing poultry prices, egg prices rise. Could this be a further impact on what people are seeing, the end product at stores?
Yeah, there's, if you watch this, now we're the 28th state, 29 if you can, now that today, clearly there are supply and demand issues here, right? There are a lot of other factors that go into food prices, and we've seen some of those in recent weeks. And certainly this doesn't help that case, but it's not the sole determinant of price.
Secretary.
Please.
Pennsylvania's $7.1 billion poultry industry sits in this 10-kilometer perimeter.
Yeah, so in Lancaster County, we have 1,677 poultry operations, 10,361 statewide, but the heart of the poultry industry in Pennsylvania is in Lancaster County. All right, so it's even more reason for the heightened concern and the importance of containment and biosecurity. From an economic standpoint, I don't know the number. It's $7.1 billion total, but a significant part of that's in Lancaster County.
Is $2 million enough to cover what your needs are going to be?
So we have the $2 million in reserve. So that's an important starting point. But would say that you know, we're in active conversations of other needs if that changes. We are hopeful that with the investments in Penn State and Penn Vet and our laboratory systems that will be okay for the moment. Also keeping in mind that the U.S. Department of Agriculture reimburses for some of the cost of high-path AI, like the birds and cleanup and disposal. So we think some of that will be covered, but having the initial $2 million is an important sort of starting point for us to cover the cash flow, so there's nothing at risk.
You touched on prices a bit, but if this would spread to other flocks or other farms, do you expect this to have any negative impact on supply for consumers?
Yeah, so I think again, these are basic economics at play here, right? If you start pulling birds out, production out, meat, eggs, you know, all of that, there's only so many chickens, right? There's only so many eggs. There's only so much poultry. So we have to be aware that there could be implications to supply if we don't contain this.
Sorry, are there any additional things at stake beyond the economic concerns here? You know, I'm just trying to understand why it's so important that we contain this now, and what's really at risk if we are unable to contain it successfully, in addition to the economic concerns.
Yeah, so, well, I want to go back to the economics. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a really important economic enterprise in Pennsylvania. A significant part of our agricultural economy are the economics. There are 26,000 jobs, you know, directly or indirectly attached to the industry. So there's an economic component. There's a quality of life piece, and when I look around in all of the farms, the 1,677 that are poultry in Lancaster also provided a tremendous amount of open space, right? So there's that concern. There's also, you know, just basic food security. We have seen you know, what that looks like just by watching the evening news when folks don't have access. We want to make sure that we keep that, you know, food supply flowing. That's another implication.
Can you talk a little bit about how you contain the virus when you're cleaning up the positive environment, and how the birds are euthanized and how they are disposed of?
Yeah, so maybe Dr. Hamburg, you want to talk about process? Yeah.
So at the site during the whole entire process, we maintain very strict biosecurity protocols, control exactly who and the manner of how people and equipment can enter and exit in order to maintain that virus and prevent it from leaving the site. Additionally, decisions regarding things like depopulation are made very closely in consultation with the USDA and take into account the effect of timeliness, humane treatment of the animals, as well as the potential effects of neighboring farms and facilities that could be affected if this is not taken care of quickly.
So exactly how are they depopulated? And then how are they disposed of, like the actual process?
Yeah, so disposal is through composting. Depopulation is In this particular case, it's through composting, but both of those are very dependent upon the situation. There's a lot of variables that go into it. We do get expert advice from our partners at, Penn State and USDA and several other topic matter experts that can help advise on how to most appropriately handle each of those aspects throughout the process. And then all of that is in accordance with the USDA Red Book, which is their standards for how this must occur.
And do you guys have any other suspected cases on any farms? I know this is the first positive test. Are you testing on any other farms?
Again, Dr. Hamburg can jump in. No other high path positives at this point. Yes, in terms of very active testing.
So in that previously mentioned 10-kilometer zone, there is extensive testing of poultry within that zone. That permitting process also feeds into that testing to ensure that if it is detected again, it is very quickly addressed before it has a chance to grow. And then there's some additional monitoring of birds throughout the state as well.
Is there something magic about 10 kilometers? How did you come up with that?
So that's a very good question. So the 10-kilometer, that comes from the USDA Red Book, which is the guidance for this sort of a response, and a lot of that is based on, subject matter experts from the USDA and international poultry communities.
Well, touched on this a bit. The eggs I'm buying at the store right now, the chicken I buy at the grocery store, safe to eat, just fine, I don't have to worry.
That's correct. No worries. If it's in commerce, it's safe.
I know a couple days ago New York banned poultry auction for the time being. Is that something that might come to fruition here?
Yeah, again, the questions around sort of New York and their ban on live bird markets. We, as you noted, may know, last week, we put in a ban for fairs and expositions. That is under active review as we speak. I think after what's happened on Saturday, all of this exposition and live bird markets is under review.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, another
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the task force includes members of the state police, the National Guard. Can you explain a little bit of what the law enforcement or that role would be as part of the task force?
So we have the task force and realizing that this is an all hands-on-deck effort, right? So we would need access to potential law enforcement, DEP, Department of Health, state police, and that just as part of our response. We don't know what that would look like, but we did the tabletop exercise that we did pulled in all of those agencies from a resource standpoint. So we wanted to make sure that if we needed some part of this larger government, that they're there to help respond. Okay? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Lab with ours, so all three connected real time. The industry, the departments, Bureau of Animal Health, Penn State, Penn Vet, the USDA, the Influenza. In addition, we have equipment and supplies, and laboratories, and highly trained experts who have been on high alert and supporting our poultry producers. With this turn of events, we cannot let our continuity of business and access to interstate commerce. As such, the department will require strict adherence to testing and permitting, and industry stakeholders and backyard flock owners that if you suspect your poultry is infected with avian influenza, please report your concerns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Assistant Director of the Bureau of Animal Health and Diagnostic Services, Dr. Alex Hamburg. Dr. Hamburg?
Services, veterinary services, and wildlife services. Thanks to this great partnership, the task force is carrying out the response plan, which includes education and public outreach and minimizing risk factors incident. The number of poultry involved, how are they housed, the proximity to roads and other farms, as well as supplies, equipment, and personnel. For many years, and especially over the last, genetic analysis of these samples taken in other U.S. states has shown that the virus is being spread by infected wild birds. Highly pathogenic avian influenza is mainly spread sources.
Third, control over the access of people and equipment to poultry houses. If infected wild birds are in the area, reduce the movement of people, vehicles, or equipment to and from areas where poultry are kept regularly, and maintain biosecurity restricted access to your facility. For commercial poultry owners, clean and disinfect housing at the end of a production schedule. We encourage everyone to visit the department's website for more information about high-path avian influenza